Imagine an animal so extreme that the scientists who first studied its bones refused to believe it was real. 12 feet of antler, nearly 7 feet at the shoulder, a crown so heavy it weighed as much as a grown man, and it grew back every single year. Megaloceros giganteus was the largest deer that ever walked the earth, and for 400,000 years it dominated the plains and steppes of Ice Age Europe and Asia with a magnificence that has no equal in the living world today. Its bones have been pulled from Irish bogs, from Siberian permafrost, from cave sediments across a continent it once ruled. This is the story of the animal that wore the most audacious structure evolution ever placed on a living skull, and what the world did to it in the end. The monarch of the open plain. To understand Megaloceros giganteus, you have to stand inside the world that built it. The Pleistocene epoch, spanning roughly 2.6 million to 11,700 years ago, produced an Ice Age Europe that bore almost no resemblance to the continent we know today. In the periods between glaciations, vast open grasslands and steppe woodlands stretched from the Atlantic coast of Ireland eastward through Central Asia, a continuous, wind-swept mosaic of productive habitat, teeming with megafauna on a scale the modern world has entirely lost. Woolly mammoths moved in the distance, cave lions patrolled the margins, spotted hyenas ranged across a landscape that was, by every measurable standard, more richly populated with large animals than any ecosystem alive today. Into this world, Megaloceros first appeared in the fossil record approximately 400,000 years ago. It was not a tentative arrival. Within the constraints of geological time, it claimed its ecological position quickly and held it across a range that eventually stretched from Ireland in the west to Siberia in the east, and from North Africa to China, a distribution so vast that the common name Irish elk, applied by the Victorian naturalists who found its most spectacular specimens in Irish peat bogs, is doubly misleading. It was not exclusively Irish. It was not technically an elk. It was a cervid, a true deer, and based on molecular and morphological analysis, its closest living relative is the fallow deer of the genus Dama. Ireland simply preserved it so well in the oxygen-poor depths of its ancient bogs that early science formed a geographic bias that the name preserved long after the biology corrected it. Megaloceros was not Ireland's beast. It was the Pleistocene world's beast. From the fog-soaked Atlantic fringe to the frozen Siberian interior, everywhere the open grassland ran, the giant deer followed. And at the center of everything it was, always, were those antlers, structures so biologically extreme that they have fascinated scientists for over 3 centuries without exhausting the questions they raise.
The Architecture of Audacity. Hold the numbers in your mind for a moment and let them land. A total antler span of up to 3.7 meters, wider than a standard parking space. A combined antler weight in a mature male estimated at approximately 40 kilograms, 88 pounds of bone suspended above a skull that had to be architecturally engineered to carry it without catastrophic mechanical failure. The cervical vertebrae of Megaloceros were massively reinforced. The neural spines of the thoracic vertebrae were elongated to anchor the enormous muscle groups required simply to hold the animal's head level. Every bone in the upper body was a structural solution to the engineering problem those antlers created. The antlers themselves were palmate, broad and flattened in their upper sections, like an open hand, a form shared with modern fallow deer and moose. And like all true deer antlers, they were shed and entirely regrown each year, making them the most metabolically intensive structure produced by any mammal on an annual cycle. To rebuild those antlers, Megaloceros had to mobilize enormous quantities of calcium and phosphorus. Stable isotope analysis of Megaloceros skeletal material has confirmed what the biology would predict.
The animal was seasonally drawing down its own skeletal mineral reserves to fund antler regrowth, effectively cannibalizing its own bones each year to rebuild its crown. Paleontologist Adrian Lister, whose research has been central to modern understanding of Megaloceros biology, demonstrated that antler size in the genus follows a predictable allometric relationship with body size. Larger deer produce disproportionately larger antlers relative to their mass. Megaloceros was simply the living extreme of a pattern that runs through every member of the deer family. Nature had followed an existing formula to its absolute physical limit. The result was not an accident or an aberration. It was the logical, inevitable terminus of a biological trend that evolution had been running for millions of years. And those antlers almost certainly functioned primarily as display structures, visual weapons deployed in the arena of sexual selection. The sheer spectacle of a fully antlered male Megaloceros silhouetted against the pale sky of a Pleistocene afternoon, with its rack catching the low winter light, was itself a force multiplier in the competition for mates. Females chose, rivals reconsidered, and the genes that built larger antlers passed forward, generation by generation, until the antlers were 12 feet wide. These were not merely bones, they were a language, and evolution had given Megaloceros the loudest vocabulary in the Ice Age world. Surviving the Pleistocene. Magnificence in the Pleistocene was never a guarantee of safety. The world Megaloceros inhabited was predator-rich in ways that the modern landscape has largely ceased to be, stripped of its great carnivores by the same forces that would eventually threaten the deer itself. The cave lion, Panthera spelaea, was larger than any lion alive today. The spotted hyena, Crocuta crocuta, operated across Europe in socially coordinated packs of a scale that modern African populations rarely achieve. The gray wolf ranged from coast to coast, and in some regions, the scimitar-toothed cat, Homotherium latidens, added yet another apex predator to a landscape already dense with specialized killers. Against this arsenal, Megaloceros deployed a combination of scale, speed, and collective vigilance. Its long, elegantly proportioned legs were structured for sustained locomotion across open terrain, an animal built to cover ground at pace, not to sprint through forest. Like modern deer, it almost certainly relied on herd cohesion for predator detection, the combined sensory capacity of many animals providing an early warning system that no lone individual could replicate. Isotopic and palynological analysis from Megaloceros fossil sites indicates it was primarily a grazer in open environments, though it likely shifted toward browsing during specific seasons, dietary flexibility that would have been essential for navigating the sharp climatic swings of the Pleistocene without the luxury of a stable, predictable food supply. But the antlers that made Megaloceros visually sovereign created structural vulnerabilities that no amount of speed or vigilance could entirely offset. A 12-foot rack is a liability in dense woodland. As the Pleistocene moved toward its close and forests began their long post-glacial expansion across Europe, Megaloceros populations contracted, not in a single dramatic retreat, but in the gradual way that specialized animals lose ground when the habitat that shaped them begins to change its character. The predators pressed from below, the tree line pressed from above. Between these forces, Megaloceros continued to move, still massive, still carrying its extraordinary architecture, still exactly what the open grassland had designed it to be. But the open grassland itself was becoming something else, and that was a problem no amount of antler could solve. The world that changed too fast. Approximately 12,000 years ago, the last glacial maximum ended, and the planet began the warming transition into the Holocene. The transformation was not instantaneous, but by geological standards, it was swift, and for the ecosystems of Pleistocene Europe, it was effectively catastrophic in slow motion. The vast open steppe grasslands that had stretched from Ireland to Siberia began to contract and fragment, replaced by expanding deciduous forest that spread northward and eastward as temperatures rose and precipitation patterns shifted. The habitat that had shaped Megaloceros for 400,000 years, the open plain where its antlers were an asset, where its long legs covered ground efficiently, where its grazing specialization was rewarded by endless productive grassland, was being physically replaced by a landscape structurally hostile to everything about its design. Megaloceros retreated eastward, where open steppe persisted longest, clinging to the grassland refugia of the eastern European plain and the Ural foothills, and simultaneously Homo sapiens was expanding across the same retreating landscape. The evidence for direct human hunting of Megaloceros is limited but unambiguous where it exists. A small number of Eastern European sites preserve Megaloceros remains in direct association with stone tools and hearths, confirming that people hunted and processed these animals. Whether human predation alone could have extinguished a species as large and wide-ranging as Megaloceros is debated, and most current scientific consensus supports a synergistic model. Climate change fragmented and degraded the habitat, reducing population sizes and severing the connectivity between groups, while human hunting pressure, even at moderate intensity, tipped isolated and already stressed populations past the threshold of recovery. The Irish population vanished around 10,600 years ago as woodland closed over the island. Continental European populations followed through the subsequent millennia. The Ural population, the last refuge of the species, produced its final radiocarbon date at approximately 7,700 years ago. After that, the signal goes silent. No more bones pressed into new sediment. No more antler racks embedded in fresh peat. The giant deer did not announce its ending. It simply failed to appear one spring across its last remaining range, and the grassland that had known its silhouette for 400 millennia continued on without it, emptier, quieter, and permanently reduced in grandeur in ways no one alive at the time had the conceptual framework to register. What the antlers still say. Stand before the mounted skeleton of Megaloceros giganteus in the Natural History Museum of Ireland in Dublin, and something happens that goes beyond scientific interest. The scale of the antler rack, experienced in person rather than in photographs, produces a response that is almost physical, a confrontation with the gap between the world that exists and the world that existed, measured in the specific, irreversible currency of extinction. The bones in that hall are not a cautionary tale in any simple sense. They are a record of extraordinary biological success. For 400,000 years, the adaptations of Megaloceros, its size, its antlers, its precise calibration to the open Pleistocene landscape, were not weaknesses. They were the reason it outlasted glaciations, outpaced lions, and thrived across a range spanning 2 continents and multiple climate regimes. Its vulnerability was not intrinsic. It was constructed by the collision of 2 forces operating simultaneously at a pace that left no evolutionary runway for adjustment. Rapid habitat transformation driven by climate change and the escalating hunting pressure of an increasingly effective human presence. The same dynamic, habitat loss compounded by direct human exploitation, runs through the extinction record from the Pleistocene to the present with a consistency that the fossil record documents across every continent. Megaloceros was not the first casualty of this combination, and the pattern did not end with the Holocene, but in those antlers, those 12 feet of metabolically expensive, visually spectacular, biologically honest advertisement, there is something that resists pure grief. They are the record of what evolution produces when it has enough time, enough open ground, enough freedom to reach for the extreme. They are fossilized evidence that life, operating without restraint, tends toward the extraordinary. The bones are still here, in the bogs, in the museums, in the sediment. They have not stopped speaking. The question is whether we have learned yet to hear what they are saying.